Hey, welcome back to Rogue 16, everyone. Cece, you want to intro us here?
Yes, thanks for joining us. Obviously, we have Matt on. Even thank you for taking the time out of your schedule, even after I screwed up the start time. So a lot of my UK friends might not hop on for a few more minutes because I forgot we had an hour time difference this past Sunday, which was not in effect at the UK. So I totally advertised this for 7:15, not 6:15. So, but thank you. I think so. Matt and I, San Diego Matt. I'm just gonna refer to you as San Diego Matt. I'm so sorry. I can't.
Fine.
We wanted to start with just some introductory questions for those who are not terribly familiar with how you got started with the movie poster industry. So, do you want to jump into that?
Me?
Yes.
How did I get started? Let's see. So, a long time ago, 2009-ish, I made my wife a picture for her birthday. She was my girlfriend at the time. She's now my wife. It was a Samurai Jack picture, and I made it and mounted it on a big thing on the wall and gave her that. And her sister was like, "You made that? You made that? What?" Because she just thought I was just, me. And I was like, "Yeah, I did." And she said, "You should do more of that." So I did more of that. And then, like 2010, 2011, Avengers was coming out. And I did a poster for the Avengers just for fun, put it online. Mm-hmm. I got noticed by a load of people. And then it got printed out and sent to Mark Ruffalo. And then I guess that went around the offices, and then they were like, "Oh, by the way, would you like to do the artwork for the Avengers Phase 1 box set?" And I said, "Yeah."
Yeah,
why not? That was my first professional job doing this kind of thing. Because before that, I obviously had lots of different jobs. Worked in a shop for a long time, but I used to work in video game spheres and do textures and things for games. I'm actually credited on one of the Jedi Knight games, which is kind of weirdly linked to Star Wars, when I was like 17. So it's always been there. And then I did that, and then I just did more and more and more, and then just keep on building. So it started at a high point with Marvel and went straight on from there.
So, not to interrupt, but had that comment not have been made, like, "Hey, you did that," we wouldn't be having this conversation today.
Yeah, so we can thank my sister-in-law for being like, "What? I thought you were a bum."
It's amazing
how
some scenarios can really.
Well, Matt, had you
change everything?
Had you done any? Had you been doing graphic stuff in graphic design or anything like that before that? Or?
Not really graphic design. I was always into art and stuff as a kid. Failed art at school miserably because to do sort of art in school, you have to sort of tick a lot of boxes and sort of show you're working and you're thinking. I've never been one for doing that. I should just do big weird pictures of things and go, I want to draw this. I'm going to draw Spawn. I used to draw Spawn quite a lot. In Spawn, and they were just like, "We're not doing that this week, Matt." And I was like, "Well, that's what I'm doing."
Yeah.
So I failed.
So when you did that work initially, were you proficient in some of these? Like, were you Photoshop guy? Were you like
no? So I got to know Photoshop when I was doing the textures and things for games, which is obviously a different kind of application. But I knew the basics of the program because I do all my work in Photoshop, which doesn't necessarily mean photo editing. It's actually a lot of drawing. It's just called Photoshop, isn't it?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Do a lot of designers use? I'm sorry. This is sorry, CC. This is technical. I apologize, but like, do a lot of designers use Photoshop, or are they using Illustrator?
A lot of designers who do graphic design use Illustrator.
Okay.
But I've never done that. I can't get into it. It's so like technical and like
I'm not a big fan of
the vector stuff, and it's very sort of prescribed. And as I like to be loose and I like to be able to move and change things and go and just do it all by hand almost, really. And then refine it as I go. So like my initial
al-
stuff is so rough and terrible.
You also, I feel like, when you're making a study, your rough draft, you're scribbling, you kind of get into context. When you're doing Illustrator, I feel like you're taking away from that organic, step one, step two, and that's part of the issue. It's not that it necessarily isn't a good end result, but I do feel like to some people it kind of hurts the eye, more so the artist than anything, because unless you're used to doing that all the time, I feel like it can kind of pull you out of your element and make it so you can't work in the direction you're normally used to working in.
Yeah, it's like as soon as I found out that Photoshop you could have brushes and you can sort of make essentially it'd be like a paintbrush or a pencil or a pen.
Right.
It changed everything because you just get so much like organic feeling, especially when I got a Wacom tablet.
Yeah, right.
So for years I was just doing it with a mouse, obviously.
Yep.
Then I got a tiny little hand thing where it was like that, and then you're looking at the screen. And then I've got a screen. What they call a Cintiq. I've got a Cintiq now, and that's 1-to-1. So it's essentially just like drawing. It's brilliant.
Are you are you on PC or Mac or what's your?
I was Mac for a while.
Yeah.
But it's just too closed off and you can't play games on it. So
yeah. You're not wrong. Yeah.
Well, kind of along that vein, so we could have another nerd out. So Chris Valentine did his homework regarding, was that the size of the Revenge of the Sith poster?
Oh, my PC is ridiculous. I've got one of those or two of those GeForce RTX things in it.
Yeah.
128 gigabytes of RAM.
Right.
All that. This million core, whatever. It was very expensive, and it's been fine with most things, but with this one, because I decided to make it so big, it really started to chug towards the end.
There's only a certain amount of things computers. I mean, they can do a hell of a lot, but once you start really, really pushing them to the limits, man, that's.
It was getting very, very warm. Like,
yeah, sure.
I was like, is it gonna melt?
Yeah.
No, yeah. Me and Matt said that before. So Matt works in film. I work in audio, and I always say, like, when you can start feel the room heating up, you've been overworking a little too much. It's time to dial it back.
It's when you turn a layer off, and then 5 seconds later it turns off. On the screen,
that's a huge problem. That's a huge problem. That's funny. Does that now? That's a good. This is a good thing to ask. I mentioned this to CC. I wanted to get your thoughts on this, Matt. When you go to design something these days, because you have the quad to make, or potentially a quad to make, are you designing the quad and then pushing in to get the poster, or are you doing the poster that you need to make and then building out to make the quad? Like, what's the?
It's kind of like a bit of both. So it's even wider as well for other usages like banners and popcorn tins. That was on Phantom Menace,
sure.
There was a popcorn tin. So it has to be even wider to wrap around like a tub. But I start off, the initial sort of thumbnails are the poster, the one sheet poster. And then I'll quickly expand it and add more, because otherwise it can be a bit pointless. So like with this one, got to add in the Jedi temple and the thingy Mabobby place where Padme lives, and they're not in the poster, and then like a lot of the ships aren't in the poster on this one, but it's because then you get that extra. So it's both, but I always start with the main poster, and then expand it out, and then when you expand it out, that can change the poster as well a little bit, so you sort of go a bit back and forth.
Yeah.
And when you say thumbnail, do you mean the like kind of Sharpie quick sketch that you've done?
Yeah, the ones I've got in a notebook. Where's that notebook? I don't know where that notebook is. Oh yeah, it's underneath. It's underneath a xenomorph. Hang on. Oh no, this is an empty one.
An extra one.
That. Forget it. I don't know where it is. I've got a moleskin that I do the little thumbnails in. Yeah. Which are literally like with a biro or a
just an idea of what you're gonna do. Yeah. Here's a question. So I was talking with Jason earlier about this. Obviously in collecting, we talked to Regal Robot. We talked to a bunch of, people about licensing. and how the licensing thing works with collecting and pieces that are made with art and posters, all that stuff. I'm sure Disney gives you an idea of, okay, this is what we want. Are they giving you any sort of feedback in terms of like, these characters we want in it, these don't, or are you doing this stuff and then they're coming back with changes? Like, well, how does that work?
Yeah, I
so
think-
they go, we do the poster for this. So let's talk. We're talking Revenge of the Sith. So
Mhm.
Revenge of the Sith. And I go, yeah. I come up with the thing, the rough concept, and then they say, luckily, yeah, do that.
Right.
And then once it goes more fleshed out, they'll start going, that ship isn't quite like that. It's got like this little diddly on it, and then like, oh, Vader's helmet, maybe we should just push it a little bit more towards A New Hope, or a little bit more towards Revenge of the Sith, because his helmet changes and looks different in every film.
Yeah, totally.
And it's not a great idea to make it 100% accurate, I think, and they agree. It's more about getting like the feeling right. So the helmet, Darth Vader's helmet in this one, was a bit back and forth with us, and I wanted it to the initial thing was making it really accurate to the movie, and it looked like a giant bucket because it's so much wider. So then we pushed it a bit. I pushed it in a little bit more, and then that sort of just made it go instantly read as Darth Vader.
Yeah.
Even though it's not quite exactly the same as it is in the movie, but it's also not the New Hope one, so it's more symmetrical, because the New Hope is asymmetrical and totally wild. Actually, when you look at it, so it's just things like that, and then just making sure you get the right ships.
Matt, I was curious. What was your inspiration for having Anakin shedding a tear?
Because he's not really happy about what he's doing in the movie, is he? When you watch the movie, he's not happy about it. He feels like he has to do it. He gets wrapped up in his little world of trying to sort of save his wife or whatever, and then that's like how he gets twisted around. And I feel like it's important to show that aspect a little bit.
I feel like that was a nice little subtle but impactful addition.
I really wanted that in. They were just like, yeah, that's great, straight off. So yeah. No,
So was that,
it's the whole idea. It's the whole idea of the film, right? I mean, that's the whole thing with Anakin. He falls into something horrible, and he doesn't. He never wanted to, but it ends up happening, right? It sucks.
Yeah.
And that was the question I had was, is it like, did you always picture this, or the main theme of this poster being Anakin versus Obi-Wan and Mustafar, like that confrontation?
Yeah, because you want to show it going to hell. So it's not so much about that confrontation, it's the color and the fact that it's just like so overbearing, and it's not a light-hearted Star Wars film, really. So I was like, well, what's the core of it is that it all goes to hell for him. So you just show that literally, don't you? Which is what George Lucas did with the movie anyway. So, and then like I think I had always had the jewel on there at the bottom, but the initial idea was all Anakin and only Anakin, or Darth Vader, as he is, obviously, because he's so sort of wrapped up in himself and self-absorbed that I didn't want to have Padme or Yoda or Palpatine or any of them on there, because the idea is he's just totally wrapped up in himself.
Alone. He's encompassed. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now, with a panel of creatives here, one thing I know I run into quite often, I'm sure Matt does as well, as such as yourself. So when you're working on these type of posters, what I was curious, this is more of a personal question. We always run into the, when is it finished? Is it ever finished? All the coulda, shoulda, woulda when it is finished, right?
Yeah.
So now you're operating under or alongside with somebody's guidelines, right? Make it like this, change that, add this, etc. in certain scenarios. But it seems that you have quite a bit of, creative liberty there. Do you ever find yourself, once a piece is finished, where you're just like, oh, maybe I should have done this? I mean, I know it naturally is something that probably happens, but have you ever been 100% once you completed something, said, yes, that's it. I nailed it. It's done, and I feel great about this? Or do you always look back at the post as kind of having that little feeling like, if only?
I'll tell you how it goes for me. I push and push and push and push, push and push, and work and work and work. And then towards the end of a poster, I'm working till 10, 11 o'clock because there's a deadline. And I'm just like, I've got to get this, got to get this. I end up doing too much stuff and I'll pull back on some things. That always happens. So, but I'm like, okay, I'm happy with this now. I'm done. And then I submit it final, they approve it. And then the second they go, yes, it's approved, we're going to go to print. All I see is everything I did wrong. So literally just oodles of things. I go, okay, what was I thinking? So, yeah, no.
Yeah, it seems to just be a natural thing as creatives, right? And a lot of people, I get that question a lot too. Like, well, how do you know when you're finished? And it's like, well, is it ever really finished, right?
It's just when the deadline's up and it's taken off of you, really.
And
that's it.
Yeah, and then you kind of have that like pressure. But then the other thing, too, I was wondering is, so when you're working on something that you're passionate about, right? Like, we know you're a fan of Transformers, we know you're a fan of Blade Runner, etc., Star Wars. It's sort of, I don't want to say easy to jump into it. Sometimes it can be more difficult because you have so many ideas ruminating. But is it hard to find yourself getting inspired when you're pitched with a project where you have no relation or no connection to the film or the IP or something like that?
The answer is yes. I'm lucky that doesn't happen very often for me anymore, especially because I kind of like pick and choose what I want to do. And I get to these big jobs that will, keep me going financially for a while. So I say no to a lot more stuff than I used to because of the fact that if I don't really care, you can see it in the work, I think.
Yeah.
Well, it's a nice place to be where you can say no.
Oh yeah, I'm so lucky.
I mean, that's a huge plus. Another good question, Matt, because I know you do collect some stuff yourself, and I'm sure we'll talk about that at some point. But does it, at some point, when you started, you weren't thinking people were going to collect your art? I can't imagine.
No.
You just be like, oh yeah, people are going to collect this stuff, right? You're doing it for the art, for the client, for the artwork.
Yeah.
Once people started to collect this stuff, like actually collect your pieces, does that go into your mind when you're making a piece now? Like, does it affect your work at all that you're thinking this is a collectible piece? Like, it needs to go with these other pieces, or at least like, is it anything that you think about when you're creating?
I feel the pressure when I've had a big success, which
sure.
And then the next one, especially with these Star Wars ones, because it's like a series, and I feel like not that I've got to top myself, but I've got to have a sort of consistent level, and try and, because we're locked in on the compositional style on these now.
Yeah.
So then it's like, how do I make them different as well each time? So it's kind of there's a pressure there. All I ever try to do is make it for myself. Like, I go, would I like that up on a wall?
Yeah.
And then B, just think about the people that like the thing. So I'm not interested particularly in collectors per se, or more people who like Star Wars. So if I'm making a Jurassic Park poster, I make it for people who like Jurassic Park, not people who collect posters, if that makes sense.
Totally.
Yeah,
totally makes sense. And you do have, I mean, CC, I think is another question we were going to ask. You do have another couple in this series that people are wondering about, right? CC?
Yeah, I think just as far as I know, we had a few questions about Attack of the Clones, which had its 20th anniversary in 2020. Because as like Matt and I were there at Celebration, they had a lot of merch for the anniversary. Was it just that they didn't ask you to do it for that year, or is that still in the pipeline?
I don't know, to be honest. I'm contracted to do anything and everything Star Wars that they ask, specifically the 9 saga movies. So if they come to me and go, do you want to do it? I've got the concept ready to go already on that one. So I know that they want to do them all. It's just finding the right release. I mean, I don't know
The right
ins and
time to
outs of
release
it,
them.
but I would say
Yeah.
they want to
Well,
space things out.
a lot of
obviously, so-
times, Matt, aren't they waiting for things to be able to be put them back in theater type of situations?
yeah,
right?
as well,
I
because
mean,
you got to have the window of opportunities. So, like,
Yeah.
I think it was Return of the Jedi one, maybe, that came out the same time as Guardians of the Galaxy 3.
right.
It's obviously the same company, Disney.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah, studio.
same
Sure.
studio overarching.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's their big new tentpole movie. So Return of the Jedi. So it's like, how do you fit it in?
Of course.
But I feel like they've been quite successful and they're getting bigger each time. So like this episode 3 feels like a bigger, wider sort of release again.
And they're not
Plus.
gonna release it on the 23rd, like the 23rd
No.
anniversary, right? They're gonna wait for something like a 20th, 25th.
When did Attack of the Clones come out?
I think
I
you
think it was
said what?
2002.
Yeah.
2002. So what the
Right.
25th is 2027.
Yeah.
So
Which-
that's going to be the 50th of A New Hope.
Yeah.
So let's say the 30th anniversary, I would say, is Attack of the Clones. That would be what I would do. They might
Interesting.
not do that. That's just like my sort of.
Geez, that's so spread out. That's crazy.
Or in
Well, plus,
2027.
You've got to keep it alive.
Oh, of
I think
course.
it's better to play the long
100%.
game with these things. And
100%.
yeah,
Now we talked about this a little bit, just as collectors and sort of off camera. So the quad, okay, your paint. I'm assuming, and I could be wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong. That's the original painting. It's not like what we see as the poster is what you paint and then you add on to there. What we're seeing initially, the original work is the larger, and then as the posters, prints, etc., get made, the image is being broken down. Is that correct, or is that?
that is
Okay.
correct now. It wasn't before. So Empire Strikes Back was the first time actually where for whatever reason it needed to be wider for I guess a quad in the UK or something. So then at that one I did actually add more artwork on after.
So you add on to. Okay, that's interesting.
And then since then I was like, I'm going to preempt this because I feel like
That can throw the
come
whole flow of
back.
the art off. Yeah.
And then so I've just sort of gone and developed that sort of idea further with most of my posters now. I like to do that. And it's just gives you so much more freedom.
And people really like those quads. I mean, I know CC, and I agree with CC on this. The Return of the Jedi print, getting more of the Ewoks and more of the forest and all that stuff is just fantastic in that print.
Oh, I loved
It's great.
doing that. I love
Oh,
that.
it's
Putting the
so good.
little Ewok village in.
It's so good. It's tough. I mean, these posters are getting printed so large now. I mean, they're so big. It's hard to figure out where to put these damn things anymore. Like it's posters are what are the size of these, CC? Do you remember?
So like a one sheet is, what is it, 27 by 40?
40.
Yeah.
And
Jeez.
then the bottleneck ones, which is the ones I typically get, are 24 by 36, and then the quads are 30 by 40. And I'm that kind of sentimental
Amazing.
idiot. Like I got the Return of the Jedi quad because I was at Celebration when they showed it. And
You should see. Sorry to interrupt. You should see the ones that they've got in the Disney Lucasfilm office on the wall. They've got 60 by 45.
Oh my god!
Ginormous.
Oh, the big, huge, almost like the
Because
ones
I
that
make
used
the
to be
art
folded.
pretty much that big. So
Yeah,
you can
right.
take it.
Yeah.
And I went to visit recently, and I was just like,
Where did they
Ooh.
put them?
they've got lots of space.
They got a ton of
Yeah, they
space,
have
huh?
plenty. Yeah, they have plenty.
That's
of space.
crazy. That's so cool, man. Was that fun to see?
It was very fun to see, and
That's
also I
so
was just
cool.
taken aback at the humongous size of the thing.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's so neat.
well, and we're also
Yeah.
big Disney fans, and I still find it hard to believe that you haven't taken them up on their offer to get the VIP treatment at any of the Disney.
I don't leave the house very often. I do it
He's
for
too busy
work.
drawing.
Otherwise,
He's
I'm
always
like,
drawing.
don't
Yeah.
like crowds.
That's funny. That's funny. Matt, how did you get connected with I mean, maybe it's not hard. How do you connected with Bottleneck? Like how did the Bottleneck thing come about with them selling those things through that?
So when they first-ish started, I think they'd been going maybe a year or 6 months. This was when I was starting out as well, so back in 2012, 2013. And Joe at Bottleneck obviously saw my stuff online. It was either a Batman thing I did or something else. And he said, do you want to come? They used to do these sort of group artist shows for up-and-coming artists. So it'd be like 30 or 40 artists all doing a piece. And we'd put it up in their gallery and people would go look at it. And then I did like a sort of semi solo exhibition with Marco Manev. And at that one, I did these Star Wars art prints. There's like a trilogy. And they got noticed by Lucasfilm and Acme Archives. And at the time, it was kind of like underground stuff, and it wasn't strictly licensed, you know, very grey area. And I thought, oh God, they're gonna sue us. But they were just like, these are lovely. We would like to release them. So basically, then that started that relationship with Acme Archives and Lucasfilm and Bottleneck, and it's just like grown over the years. That's and then so cool. So when we do these, we get it pre-approved to be released with Bottleneck, because A, that's what people expect, and B, like the quality of the screen prints and posters that they put out is really good. It's not like a cheap, like off the shelf thing. It's much more of a nice. So I just really like it because you get. I know for sure I'm going to get a good quality print out of it. You know.
Yeah.
Now, Matt, when they do those, when they do the variants and such, do you have a say in the variants? Like when they change the color, when they change, is that something that you participate in, or?
That's a good question.
Yeah, I do all that. I just go, let's make it black and white, or let's do this, let's do that.
I feel like that. I feel like that's what everyone does, where it's like, yeah, let's just change this to black and white and add one bit of color.
I feel like for some of the companies that release these is also maybe just a formula where they sometimes go to artists and say, hey, let's take this and make it this. And I think some artists will say, oh, I like that, let's continue, or here's my input. I just wasn't sure. I know some do, some don't.
Yeah.
Well, I love that, because I know I was like thrown for a loop with Empire Strikes Back, because I was like, oh crap, I can't decide between the regular and the variant. So I was like, that collector mentality, I was like, fuck it, I'll just put one in one room and one in another room. And it's been like that for years. And they're two of my favorites along the lines of like the relationship you have with Bottleneck or with Disney. I know that you've like just tweeted at some of the Star Trek folks of like, hey, I'd love to do a poster for this, that, and the other. Can I please beg you to ask Disney if you could do anything for Andor? Because we're huge fans of obviously Rogue One and Andor, and it's been criminally like ignored.
I could. It's different departments, isn't it? So like Disney Plus is completely different to the theatrical. Because I work with theatrical people.
Matt, have you done anything for their TV side at all? Or?
I did a WandaVision poster when WandaVision came out. And
that was like a great one.
I'm going to say it was for the UK. It was very random. It just sort of came out of nowhere, and I was very excited. And then, because that went down well, I got
this one.
Yes, I can't remember his name. The person that did the show spoke to him, and I love doing that.
You did a Mando.
I did a Mando one, but that was for Acme and Bottleneck, so that wasn't for the studio.
Got it.
But yeah, no, I would do them. It's like I'm currently campaigning to do one for Alien Earth, because I'm a big Alien fan. So
yeah, I love that. The Romulus one you did is great.
Yeah.
No, I get a question. Again, this is more of a personal question for myself. So a lot of times, as you start to get familiar with different artists, whether it's from the 60s, the 70s, current, you can always sort of pick up a little bit of like their flavor, right? Like who, what books or movies or comics or art that they kind of pick from and shows and basically influence. You have a very specific style. Do you have any particular artists that you were influenced or inspired by when you initially started taking your approach?
Yeah, John Alvin is right up there, and Bob Peak.
Okay.
So a lot of people go Drew Struzan, and Drew Struzan isn't one that really influenced me stylistically. What Drew Struzan did was sort of be a sort of face to the art, and so you could go, oh, somebody makes these. which is very important. He was one of the first people that you really started hearing about as somebody who made movie posters. But John Alvin did like Cocoon, Arachnophobia.
Yeah,
Did the original Blade Runner too, right?
Yeah, Empire of the Sun, which is a really, really good movie poster.
Mhm.
And they influenced me an awful lot. And then Bob Peake just he did Superman the movie, and he did Star Trek the motion picture. And there's kind of like simpler compositions, kind of like that just get to the core of the movie, are things that really influenced me, I think.
Bob Peake is a very interesting. If I remember, I think he did. Did he do? He did a West Side Story, or maybe I'm wrong on that. Oh, he did. Okay, yeah.
He did a West Side Story, and he did.
I know he did Madrid, because that's like a very it's a very specific.
Apocalypse Now was Bob Peake.
Yep, Apocalypse Now.
Excalibur, lots of really stylish. I know he did a lot of Star Trek posters, obviously, but it was like not perfect. So like Drew Struzan stuff is like the likenesses and stuff are perfect. So he can,
and you can tell when you're looking at it immediately. You can say that's a Drew Struzan.
Yeah,
I think with Bob Peake there was some
Bob Peake
variation
did sort of
in
different
style.
stuff. But like it wasn't necessarily all about the likeness. It was more about like the sort of color and the shapes and.
Like you said,
they were a lot looser.
Getting the capturing the feel of it, because some of the aesthetic or the execution on one. It's almost so different to the next that you would almost think it was two different artists.
Yeah,
which that's when someone can pull that off, I find it to be impressive.
It reminded me of that.
Those guys are amazing.
You had posted the William Shatner likeness that you did, and kind of you explained it really well as far as like it was a bit rougher, the likeness, but it still had more like emotion to it than initial one that you had kind of more perfected. So obviously it's nice to see art that looks like it's still done by a human hand, if that makes sense. Like it's not necessarily perfect or like photorealistic. You could still tell it's, even if it's digital, because I know that's a big argument as to, digital versus traditional mediums. I'm like, I don't think it matters so long as the end result kind of speaks for itself.
Oh yeah, no. It doesn't matter what anybody uses, except obviously like generative AI that can get lost. But like any tool, it doesn't matter. It's the end result, really. I think that is what's important.
Matt, are you concerned about AI coming into the? I mean, specifically,
I'm concerned about the sort of legality of it and the fact that nobody seems to be doing anything about it. Because I feel like why aren't any of these big companies doing anything about it? Are they just hanging back to see how it goes? Because it is essentially stealing information and spitting out. Yeah, it's taking information from everybody, basically, and So, be it the writing or the generative art or any of that, I just feel like it's the sort of moral. But artists have always been inspired by other artists. Sure, like we were just talking about with me. Mm-hmm. But I feel if you take that away and it's not being done by a person, then there's no leap to something else. Yeah, and
you're losing a lot of emotion, right? It's the same thing like in music. When you listen to an AI generated song, it's losing what you're connecting to, right? Like when you listen to a song and that reminds me of my first girlfriend, that reminds me of high school, that sort of way back kind of feeling. Same with the video. Now, the video, if you're looking for like a B shot, like an aerial view of a townhome or something, that's one thing. But when you're trying to capture feeling and emotion, essence, basically, I think AI is really tough, right? Because there is that possibility for people who just consume it and don't really think about it. But when you're trying to, with the Revenge of the Sith poster, for example, like you said, you were very specific at how you approached it based on that loneliness, and you can almost feel that. You can feel that he's alone and it's in this dark place, and he feels he's trapped, and hence the tear and just the way he's positioned and things like that. Yeah, so the AI thing is scary. It's interesting.
The scary thing though about AI, I mean, this talk about random talking here, but the scary thing is that
already.
I know. I'm sorry, but the scary thing is that it's that way right now. That
Yeah.
doesn't mean that in the future, at some point, it will get to the point where it can do some of that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
It's
I don't
scary.
think it matters. It's like books when Kindles came along.
Yeah,
it was
sure.
like that's the end of books. That
Right.
or when the
People
records
said
came
it.
along. That's
People
the end
def-
of musicians.
People said
What
it.
do we
You're
need
right.
musicians for? We've got records.
You're right.
You know, it's nonsense. All it does is it just becomes more focused and refined, and people that care,
Yeah.
which is a lot of people, will still care to
Yeah.
have something that's made by somebody.
Well, an AI can be used for all kinds of fantastic things. It just depends on how.
Yeah,
you
it could be
use
used as a good resource.
Well, and speaking,
It shouldn't be used to make silly pictures. It should be
Yeah, I hear
used
you.
to like help analyze medical data and
For
things
sure.
like that. It's just
definite
nonsense.
uses
honestly.
for it.
on a morality subject as well. Sorry, not that I wanted to get terribly deep, but I was trying to find, because I try to be pretty good about like keeping up with the news, and I was looking through a lot of comments on the Revenge of the Sith poster specifically, and so help me, I don't know how you stand it, because I instantly got upset, like with how many people were like, gee, do you think you could just post a larger JPEG of this poster? I could just print it at home.
Yeah,
And
no,
I
I
was
get
like,
emails
crazy.
daily.
That's
Can you
not
just
internet for me today.
send me a 4K image, please?
That's
I'm just-
crazy.
and I'm just
I
like,
told San Diego Matt that, and he was like, you're joking. And I'm like, no, the lack of self-awareness for people. So if anyone's watching and is excited about this poster, please don't freaking do that. Like,
I know.
there's, yeah,
That's
it's
unbelievable.
and so
it's
I don't
pretty
forget to
crazy.
say something
Matt,
in general.
is that? It's interesting. I mean, is that why? Because I haven't, what I haven't seen with your work is some of your work made into, like, let's say, iPhone backgrounds or
Pencil boxes, yeah.
you know,
Random
desktop
stuff.
backgrounds or anything like that. Is part of that just because it's going to be too easy to print off at that point? Like,
No, I just don't do it.
you just don't do
I ain't
it.
got the
Okay.
time.
Yeah, I was just wondering because
No, no. The thing with the thing with the stealing of the artwork is if I posted like a 600 pixel poster online and it was really popular, that wouldn't stop the people that are selling them on Redbubble or Etsy or
and someone can
wherever
actually
from
go and make
still
an offset
printing them and
lithograph.
blowing them up because they just blow it up and they'll
Right.
sell it and somebody will get it and they'll either go, why is this so fuzzy? Or
yeah,
they'll get it and they won't care.
yeah,
But
that's true.
you know, it is what it is.
That's interesting. Chris had a good thing here. Matt, what's your favorite stage of the poster making process, and how do you get past burnout?
Okay, favorite stage of the poster making process is when you crack it, when you crack a poster, when you have that idea. So like with The Empire Strikes Back, which is one of the best feelings I ever had when I came up with doing the chamber, you know, which because I watched the movie again because I was stuck. I couldn't come up with anything that seemed different and new. And I was watching the film, and then that bit happened, and I was like, And then I was furiously Google seeing if anyone else had done it. And as far as I could see, no one had done it as specifically in that way where I wanted it to be the negative space. And I just felt so good. And I was just like, this is it. This is it.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So that's the best feeling. And then, go on, sorry.
I'm sorry. Do you think with Empire Strikes Back, with that, your style changed at all?
Yeah, it did. It was a bit of a turning point, I think. So definitely.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and then burnout. I don't know how you get past burnout. I'm burnt out all the time.
Well, and I know Chris Valentine. He just had another baby, so he's up at all hours because of that anyway, and painting in between that. But Matt, San Diego Matt, would you be able to show the quad of this as far as like talking about how much time? I also had some questions about the quad in general, so I would assume we know.
I love that everyone's saying quad, by the way. Because lots of people in the US say to me, "What's a quad? What's a quad?"
Oh, really?
It's like a UK poster size, and it's sort of. I feel like I'm having a bit of an effect on people's mindset on posters. I love them. Yeah. I love a wide
I think
poster.
I first had to do my research, but I have seen people refer to just like the landscape portrait in general as a quad. Like I know the Chris Thornley Batman '89 that you guys did for the screening. I had people referring to that as a quad, and I was like, no, it's not. It's still like a 24 by 30, 24 by 36. But yeah, I love that Bottleneck is doing the quads and have gone backwards, because I know Jason, one of his favorites was the Empire Strikes Back in that quad format, because you really saw more of the meditation chamber. I'm assuming that they're also gonna do the Revenge of the Sith quad as well. Yep. And it might not be, and I say this only as a customer, I'm not getting paid by Bottleneck. But I think they've done typically like the standard kind of portrait style ones on May the 4th is what we're assuming. And then they might be doing the quad like a few months afterwards. I think they did that with Phantom Menace.
I'm going to say May the 4th is definitely penciled in. I'm not sure if they're gonna spread them out or not, because they do the lenticular things as well. Which
do you like the lenticulars?
I'm not personally bothered, but some people love them. So
yeah, I'm not a big fan.
I think it depends on the art. If it's otherwise, I think it's gimmicky.
I liked the idea of with an acrylic one. What I really wanted to do was not for Star Wars, but was do like for example, if you did like a Studio Ghibli, you'd do a backing that was like the painting, and then you'd have a layer that was the cell animation on top. I thought that would be great to show the difference between, and you could have the sort of acrylic layers in between,
almost like an exploded view.
Yeah. I thought that would be a cool thing to do with that. So. I haven't done it obviously because
it's funny looking through your sort of like back catalog of art. I was originally going to ask, like, do you have a dream project that you haven't tackled yet? But man, you nailed every. I mean, you get all the classics. You get Dune, you get Blade Runner, you get 2001.
Well, this is a good question. Do you have a favorite? Do you have a piece of art that you're most proud of? Do you have a?
That must change though, right?
Probably Empire Strikes Back for various reasons, because it was a turning point. It was really great because it was right at the beginning of COVID, and it actually was going to be a big release, and then it got cancelled because everything got cancelled for a bit. And instead of them just going, forget it, it's cancelled, they were just like, we're not going to do the release in cinemas, but we still want you to do the artwork,
right? Which
I thought was really it's just really cemented like my relationship with Disney and Lucasfilm personally, because they did that for me, and then it did get like sort of, it was in drive-throughs and things like that, and it obviously got used online, so, and it just has led to a lot more Star Wars fun. So yeah, I'm probably, this Empire Strikes Back is the one for me, I think.
Yeah, and you were able to pull it off without using Boba Fett. I mean, everybody uses Boba Fett for an Empire Strikes Back poster.
So true.
Well, it's a bit of a reverse, weirdly. This is not really like what I was thinking, but it's kind of like funny how these happened. Of the Revenge of the Sith in a way, because Luke's on his own, and it's just only Empire, and he's the only one standing up against it, which I thought was kind of like thematic when I was making it. I remember thinking that Luke needs to be the only good guy on the poster. Yeah.
Did you when you talked, was it Disney or your idea or some, I don't know, like when you do the variants of the Japanese?
That was initially me. I just really wanted to do it.
Okay.
I just love the way like the type looks, and
it looks so cool
when you can just get really wild with it. But then it's now become more of a thing because they do localization, because they're getting wider releases anyway. So it's in lots of different countries. So I do some localization. I still do the Japanese ones.
Okay.
But I don't know if it gets done by where it gets done for like your Spanish and Korean and loads of different languages that they get put into now. So.
Yeah, I'm sure at least for the movie releases, it must happen where they.
Matt, they're probably doing it just with like Comic Sans or something, right? Like just some sort of.
I usually don't see those, so I'm like, fine.
Yeah, whatever.
I'm hoping that I'll be able to see the the Revenge of the Sith poster when I'm in Japan. Not to rub it in because I'm the only one on the panel I think that's going, but I'm hoping it's close enough that I'll be able to see it posted in front of theaters and stuff.
Oh yeah, yeah, should be.
Now, whether or not
they might have it there as well.
I'll get arrested for trying to steal one is another story entirely. I'll try to be on my best.
That's different.
There is a Japanese version of the Revenge of the Sith. I don't think it's been put online yet. But
No, not that I've seen it anyway.
CC, I do have to run because I have to pick up my daughter.
Yeah.
Sadly, the time change kind of screwed us with that, but you guys keep doing it. Keep doing your thing.
Yep.
Gonna go for a few minutes.
Matt, thanks again so much for jumping on and taking the time.
No problem.
Yes.
Enjoy the rest of the chat, and just remember there's some good questions in the chat as well. So,
yep.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, sounds good.
Bye.
Matt, I know I asked you about inspiration and things like that, like starting from, and this might be it could be an easy question to answer. So I know now you're probably laser focused. You spend a lot of time kind of in your zone and in your element. But is there any modern day counterparts or artists that are sort of doing similar to what you're doing that you look at and think, oh, I see this, and it makes you sort of push a little bit harder or make you feel like you kind of have to, change things a little bit? Or
everybody. So yeah, whenever anybody does something, I either go, wow, that's really good.
Yeah.
I'm jealous, and I go like, why am I not doing that?
That's such a tough part of being creative.
You just get like so much sort of like
that constant contrasting, comparing. Yeah,
everyone like specifics. Raid 71 was mentioned. He's one that I've always liked. I actually have quite a lot of his stuff up in the house. And then there was Ollie Moss, but he's sort of gone video games now. He was always really one that I was always just like, clever.
Oh, when he did that,
clever
when he did that trilogy set, that was so simple, but so that then that was going a ways back. But I remember seeing that, and I'm like, it is interesting, right? Because sometimes you have to sort of contain, because there's also that excitement. You're doing something that you're passionate about. Right? You're working on something that you love, so you want to do it justice, but you also want to make sure that your ideas don't get away from you or go too overzealous.
Yeah, totally. So it's good to see people like that. It's like there's a pair of artists called Phantom City Creative, and they do. I'm working with Justin actually on a couple of things with Vice Press, and it's so good, and I just go, and it's great to see that in a way, because you go, it does drive you to do better, and also just out of spite, I'm gonna have to try harder.
Well, it's always good, right?
I'm glad you mentioned Vice Press, because I almost thought that sorry, I didn't realize my screen was going to pop up right when we were talking about that. I'm not used to driving the ship when it comes to the show, but do you at least get to flex those muscles of like, oh, if I didn't come up with the idea myself, at least I can do it for Vice Press, or come up with it through like put it out through Vice Press, depending on licensing and all that.
Yeah, well, the whole thing with Vice Press was it was started by me and James as a sort of vehicle for me to do stuff that I want and stuff that James wants to do as well. So it was Judge Dredd was the initial thing that we both really wanted to see artwork for, because it's just like an English institution. And then like Star Trek, I really want to do Star Trek, so that's literally why we went and got the Star Trek license, so that I could do Star Trek posters, which has now turned into me doing Star Trek posters for Paramount and stuff, because they've seen what we've been doing. So yeah.
And then I'm gonna see if I just wanted to mention this so I don't forget about it.
Go for it.
Because it's been one of those days. I want you to tell us about this. Back to Revenge of the Sith, because I'm not over talking about that. Let me see if I could share this. Come on. Let's see if I can do this. Talk amongst yourselves or anything.
Blah, blah,
Or do we
blah.
have questions in the chat? Let me see.
Bit of stretching.
All right, let me see. Present. Screen share.
I saw. Did you ever end up finding the Blade Runner with the Japanese obi strip? Because I noticed you posted it in the group a little while back, and we have a couple collectible stores out here called Newberry Comics, and a few others that are like real, like, you know, they just sell obscure stuff like that, albums, DVDs, and
Yeah.
they just always randomly have that stuff. So yeah, I saw that and it made me think, and I was like, oh, and I popped over and they had a bunch of different variations of the different movies, the still books, things like that. It's on one part I was like, oh, it's interesting that, you know, you're looking for something that's of your own making, because everybody just assumes, oh, the artist made it, so they must ship a giant box to his house full of posters, and it doesn't always work that way, unfortunately. But so yeah,
They just said we might be releasing it in Japan in passing once, and then like,
then you find out on the internet
6
that,
months
oh,
later, Kojima posts it on his Twitter, and everyone goes, "Man, look what he's posted! He's posted the Blade Runner Japanese." I went, "What? I want it." Then somebody, a DJ in, is it a DJ? I think it was a DJ in Japan, sent me it, so I've got it. Yeah, the power of the internet.
So I thought it was nice that you told me about this and the volcanoes in the back. Who helped you with that?
Oh, the little spiky volcano rocks were drawn by my daughter. So a lot of times, I'd say a lot of times, but sometimes if I can get her interested, she'll draw elements of my posters. So like she did some of the trees on Return of the Jedi. Sometimes I'll sneak like her name in or her date of birth in places, that sort of thing. But yeah, no, she drew those rocks for me. It's nice.
It's kind of like an ode to how the ILM model makers used to do it, up close in a lot of the models. The names are on there, or they'll put, you know, Bob was here, or they'll all put their, you know, whatever.
Well, it's like the unicorn. I always put the unicorn in somewhere. So every poster I do has got a little.
Yeah, I love that.
Blade Runner unicorn somewhere in it. Yeah.
I was gonna ask something and I totally forgot. Wow, it's totally gone. Completely. That a question.
It can't have been that important then. That's what I always say.
I'm like, it's like I started reading the comments and then I got completely sidetracked. Oh, then now I remember. Okay, it was on the same vein with your daughter. So as far as like, does she think it's cool to see your posters when you guys go to the movie theaters, or is she just like, everyone's dad does this, or
it just doesn't work the way with kids. At least
you don't know. You don't get anything from her. She's like you don't get anything from her. So I don't know. I think she thinks it's all right because, like, when we go to parents' evening at school, like the teachers say, "Oh, one of you is an artist," so she talks about that, and cause she loves drawing and stuff. She's really, really good at drawing, actually. So, it's hard to know because she doesn't give me anything.
Well, the problem is you're still dad, and I've run into that myself, right? With certain things, certain projects that my daughter's been exposed to, and it's just like, hey, like, you know, she finds out I made it. It's like, but then when someone else, you know what I mean?
It's just like that's it. It's just that's her life. So she's seen.
And that's like when people assume that like Robert Downey Jr. like his son must be like, oh my god, my dad's Iron Man, but like no, dad's dad. Like, you know what I mean? And sometimes I even get. I remember Jennifer Gardner was saying how like her friends at sometimes, you know, her kids sometimes like get embarrassed that she was a lecturer, and you know they get like shy and
I
weird
am a massively embarrassing dad, so I can understand that fully. Yeah,
but it's interesting because we always think, you know, the children are going to be like, wow, and it's just like, no, I'm just dad. I'm the guy who this. I'm the guy. Yeah, it's funny, but yeah, interesting. Curiosity. So is your mind now in this like, so I feel like as creatives, our minds work very differently, right? Like you said, the comparing and contrasting, the sort of, oh, the shoulda, coulda, woulda, is anything ever finished? There's all these like things we sort of, all these little bubbles we kind of get stuck in. Now, because you're designing a lot of, you know, technically advertisements, right? Advertisements, posters, whatever you want to call them, mainly for movies and screenings. Do you feel like you're starting to lock in on a specific way a design would, like, let's say you were just drawing for the fun of it, or let's say someone was just, hey, I want to commission you to do this so I can hang it on my wall. Would your mind kind of go in a different direction if you knew that it wasn't specifically being used for purpose A?
Maybe, yeah. I get itchy every now and again. So like years ago, I did a lot of 12 by 24, these tall, thin prints. And that was my first exhibition, was those, which were like landscapes, but obviously vertical. Then I did the Dutch angle thing for ages, and people started going, the Dutch angle, because I did stuff on an angle. So then I was like, I'm not doing that anymore then. So, and I do a lot at the moment where people ask for it, clients ask for it, that sort of composition ever since Empire Strikes Back. So then I get like this itch, and I'm like, I don't want to do that. So I'm trying to not do it. Not sure if it works out like that. Like, I was really happy last year with the Planet of the Apes poster that I did, because I felt like it was a bit different. So
so that gives you a little bit of like, you feel like somewhat alleviated and refreshed.
Yeah, because I feel like I'm repeating myself, even though I'm not sure if people see that. But like, I did that Alien Romulus, and I feel like it's just exactly the same thing I've been doing.
Well, it becomes
loads of people like, oh, it's nice to see you do something different, and I was like, different how? That's how I see it.
I feel like it's such a tricky space to be in, at least for yourself, right? Because you have to keep that continuity, right? Especially, at least let's just take the Star Wars for the main example here, because you can't just go completely outside the box on that, because it's like, well, wait a minute, I have all of these hanging on my wall, and this one, one doesn't belong because it's so.
Well, I was going to go completely off. So then initially, the first one I did was Empire Strikes Back, and then the next was Return of the Jedi, and I was going to just do something completely different for Return of the Jedi. Not the same composition at all, because I was like, then I can do whatever I want for the others. First of all,
that makes sense. If you change it up enough, then you don't have to follow that.
Yeah. But that's not what the client wanted, and it's not what the general people that liked The Empire Strikes Back were expecting. So then it just became that, and it didn't feel wrong. When you can tell when something feels wrong. This is my experience when I'm making a poster. When it feels wrong, you just know. So I spent a long time on Return of the Jedi doing stuff that was not like that, and it just wasn't working. I was doing weird things with like Death Stars in Darth Vader's eyes and things, and
so you were almost like purposely reaching.
Yeah, because I was trying to force myself to do something different, and then somebody, probably my wife, said, just step back, and then it just sort of came together, and then I saw it once I did that composition for Return of the Jedi. It definitely sort of span out for the others, and I was like, I know what to do now.
Nice. So that started to click and come together. Yeah, because I think as viewers, right, as us consuming the art, we sort of take for granted, right? This is your style, this is your aesthetic, this is how you execute it. And I don't think, like, being a fly on the wall, seeing that frustration, your muscles getting tight, your calves getting, kind of like you're shaking them under the desk, that feeling you get, right?
Yeah.
And I think we take that for granted, whereas on the other end, it's like, okay, it's one thing to have to sort of follow a bit of continuity and formula, but on the other end, a creative sort of needing to do what works, right, and what you feel works, so you don't feel like you're fighting against your own, your own composition and what you're doing. It's so interesting sometimes to pick the brain of an artist, because it just. And it's also one of those things where, like, it just seems so easy, right? Like, oh, he just does this. No, he doesn't just do this. There's a whole process, mentally, emotionally, and physically that goes through.
Lots of stomping around and shouting, "I can't do it!"
Yeah,
and that flipping egg.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think it's nice to hear that sometimes it's like you put a lot of thought into it. Like, having Anakin look emotional on Revenge of the Sith, and then I remember asking you about Return of the Jedi, because I always, with time in between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, it's like, and knowing your style, we kind of just assume we know what works, like we understand the formula. Like, okay, it's going to be like ATSTs, and I thought there was going to be like Palpatine kind of looming large in the back, and you're like, a wrinkly old guy or Darth Vader.
No, he's
like, which one
rubbish
looks
as well.
cooler?
He needs to be small because it's not about him. That's the thing. The thing that I always come back to, and this is usually when it clicks in, is like, what's the story of the film? So, like, A New Hope, it's going to be Luke because that's what that film is all about. Empire Strikes Back, I mean, it's in the title, isn't it? So it's the Empire Striking Back. And then Return of the Jedi, I want it to be Luke in the middle. And then it's similar to the Phantom Menace one in a way. So he's there. Palpatine's like a little, I'm going to get you. And then Vader's big, because obviously he's quite key to it. But it's Luke in between, and he's sort of what breaks that partnership of Palpatine and Vader, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is weird. I don't know if this is just what I've thought after I've made it, after it feels right. And then the Phantom Menace one is the two Jedis, and they're in between with Amidala. The Phantom Menace is Darth Maul, and you've got little Anakin, and he's like the target by the end of the movie, because Palpatine's like, ooh. So they're the only things that are helping him, and then that's why by Revenge of the Sith they're not there, because there's nobody protecting him anymore.
Yeah, that makes sense. He's all alone, and that's another thing that's going to be tough, right? To sort of have to say, okay, well, this is what's needed, right? This is what's wanted, but then, when someone's disconnected from something, right? Let's say, just playing theoretically, if I'm commissioned to do something for Star Wars, and I have no passion, love, connection to Star Wars. I've heard of it. I may have seen it in passing, whatever. Okay, this is what's what. I feel like that can work against you, or it can be more complicated, but it could also be a little bit more liberating and freeing, because you lose a lot of that like visceral frustration you get. Whereas, you're trying to sort of, make sure you deliver something that can speak to people, but because you have such a personal connection to it, as we talked about earlier in the show, is that, like, I feel like that can also sort of compound some of that frustration and make you feel like, am I doing it justice in my own eyes versus others? Do people view it and experience it the same way I do? So, sort of all of that. Do you ever find yourself at a point where, you kind of do like that, touchdown victory dance where you're like, yes, this is it, I get it? Or, I know we talked about the frustrations of like, do you ever feel like it's completed? But do you also ever get to that point where you're like, yes, this is it, and all of those frustrations kind of just flush away?
It's like an ebb and flow, isn't it? So that does happen once I've got a really solid idea of the composition and what I want to say, storytelling wise, because that's key for me, is that telling a story, sort of. Then it's the handoff, and then I just think, oh no, I could have just fixed that spaceship. Damn it! But then, like, I'll be honest, I don't think I've spoken about this very much publicly. But then, like, the day before it's going to go live, because they tell me, oh, it's going to go live this time Tuesday, I just go crazy. So, like, with this one, with the Revenge of the Sith, I basically was like having a panic attack.
Oh, really?
Before it came out, because just feeling, because it's Star Wars, and I used to love Star Wars. I remember when the run up to Phantom Menace, and I went to the special editions, and I had Return of the Jedi when I was a really little kid. So it is important to me. So then to feel that pressure, because if it's important to me, then it's important to all those other Star Wars fans. So it gets very much like, oh God, they're going to say you've screwed this one up, you jerk. Look at the state of you. Luckily, that didn't really happen.
So those are the nights where the wife's like, hey, if it's 2:30, get some sleep. Like, you got to get some sleep. Yeah.
So then when it hit, and then, like, it's pretty much generally positive, I can sort of go, phew, because I just convinced myself everyone's just going to say that I'm a complete failure. So,
and then the next one gotta come.
Yeah.
Rinse
Or at
and
least
repeat
once
all over again.
Once you've weeded through the comments asking if you could post a better JPEG so they could print it out themselves, I imagine it's kind of like a whirlwind where, and you how long, so you told me how long you were working on this, but I think that's also part of it too, is that it's like a somewhat relief that it's over after like months of hard work, but also like just seeing the flood of feedback come in. And at least I think it's only been positive that I've seen. I think this was incredibly well received. And I think very selfishly, this was the first movie I saw in theaters as a kid. So I was like hoping to, I was going through TSA at the airport when that poster came out, and when we were messaging back and forth about it, and I thought it was incredible. And I appreciate you for taking the time to talk to us about it, of course, and for sharing your process with it. I don't know if there's any other questions we've forgotten, but I don't know if this is a good stopping point. Jason, did you have anything else?
No, I mean, I feel like we had a nice casual conversation. I liked that it wasn't too like bullet points. It was great to just, talk shop and get a little peek inside your mind and your stresses and, all that. It's nice to know that when you look at something so beautiful, that the person on the other end isn't just sitting down and being like, it's another one off the list. What's next? Because like it really does take so much, and it's
a lot.
And I think it allows us to appreciate that and have a little bit more gratitude for it when you're viewing it, when you have it hanging on your wall. You can appreciate it that much more when you know all that goes into it. Yeah.
Oh,
and at least like we have regular conversations about obviously all the Star Wars stuff we collect in particular, and there's so many people who love your art and talk about it constantly. It seems like it's like I mentioned, it was like my Super Bowl when that poster came out. It's like an event that we wait for. And I just like I said, appreciate the time, and as a collector, and I think that just for housekeeping purposes, I do want to reiterate, because so many people are asking me and will continue to ask me. These will be releasing through Bottleneck on
Correct.
May the 4th. That's all we know. We don't have a release date because someone's asked in the chat for the quad, right?
We're aiming for May the 4th because obviously that's, the Star Wars day. So that's
Right.
the aim. I don't think it'll be sooner. It could be later. It's not set yet, basically. So.
Okay. I imagine it'd be the same, like DL printing doing it. They'll be timed with the limited variants. Okay. So I think it's just the quads that we're not sure if they're going to be released on the day, but obviously we'll be talking about it here on the channel and in the Facebook groups. Matt has his own Facebook group, Fans and Stalkers of Matt Ferguson, I think is what it's called.
That's correct.
Such a great name.
Yeah.
Whoever came up with that was funny when they did that. It started out as a group for Guardians of the Galaxy when I did that Star Wars style Guardians.
Oh, the commission group.
Yeah, because that was a commission initially, and then it went around in the studio, and like James Gunn and Scott Summers and stuff, and then those people just turned it into the sort of fan group, which was nice. So it's stuck, and they just changed it to that. Stalkers.
As long as it doesn't become literal, we're good.
Yeah, I hope they're not literally stalkers. That would be okay.
Yeah. But that's where you tend to post a lot of updates if they don't see it from me on the channel, like I said. So yeah.
Well, I used to post mostly on Twitter, which is now X, and I don't go on there anymore. So I will post a release on there, but I don't interact on there anymore, really. So I interact on the Facebook group, Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, all the other ones, basically.
Okay.
Nice.
I also ditched Twitter, but I haven't started up on Blue Sky yet. But
Yeah, I haven't done Blue Sky either. I gotta look into it.
It's been
Yeah.
quite nice so far. Yeah, Threads can be a bit. There's some strange people on there at the moment that were being a bit mean to me.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
we can't
It's
have
always
that.
wonderful.
No.
The
Yeah.
wonderful
Uncalled.
internet.
Yes.
But, no, I echo what many in the chat have said. Is just thank you so much for your time, man. It's been great. It's been a pleasure talking to you. It's been a pleasure being able to ask you just some, interesting and personal questions, and just getting, like I said, an idea to, see things through your eyes for a little bit. So yeah, I personally really appreciate it.
Thank you. I had a nice time. Had a nice time.
Here's
chatting.
some. I'm
I
pulling up
do
some
miss.
nice.
Somebody said I don't miss. I do miss. When I miss, it's gone. You just don't see it. That's why it gets put in the bin.
You hit delete before it hits the internet, is what I'm hearing.
Totally.
Because I've said that before. I've been. Yeah, amazing. Well, San Diego Matt has still not done an outro for this channel. It's only been several months. So we're going to abruptly end this. So there's no outro on YouTube. So sorry, folks. That's how professional we are. But
I like that. Just drop the mic. It's gone.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Mic drop, boom.
Boom.
You're
Bye, guys.
gonna do a really quick teaser of like the next poster that I have to like try to screenshot it for a split second. I'm just kidding. That ain't happening, guys. Don't try.
We have nothing queued
Everyone's
up.
gonna see who this. Yeah. All right, guys. Thanks for joining us. It's been a pleasure. And Cece, amazing. Thanks for setting this up. It's been fantastic. Matt, again, thank you for your time. And yeah, we'll see everybody pretty soon.
Yep.
Have a great day.
Bye.